You don't realize it at first. You think it's just insecurity. You tell yourself you're being petty, that the past should stay in the past. But then, one night, you see it. Her eyes light up in a way they never have with you. Not now. Not in the years you've been together. And you know, without anyone telling you, that this glow was given freely to someone else long before you came along. That's when the slow burn begins. This is not jealousy. Jealousy fears losing something you already have. This is something far more brutal. It's the gut-deep awareness that you never even had it in the first place. She will laugh, touch your face, and insist that the past has no power over you now. But your body knows. Your instincts know. And they whisper the truth. The deepest, most unguarded, most intoxicating version of her was spent on someone else. And it was spent without the price you had to pay. Nietzsche once wrote, "Memory says, 'I did that.' Pride replies, 'I could not have done that.' That's the torment of knowing her history. You're forced to measure yourself against a man you've never met, yet already resent. Because whether she admits it or not, her past experiences live in her like ghosts. They are etched into her nervous system, shaping the way she reacts, the way she withholds, the way she gives. Men don't talk about it because it makes them look insecure. Women don't admit it because it makes them look dishonest. But here's the reality. When you meet a woman, you are not meeting her at zero. You are meeting her after a long sequence of choices, each one leaving an imprint, each one redistributing her capacity for love, trust, loyalty, and enthusiasm. The tragedy? The men who came before you may have gotten the purest version of her without any of the commitments you shoulder today. They drank the wine before the bottle was corked. You're left with the dregs, pretending the taste is the same, and that's why it feels like theft. Not because you believe in some antiquated purity test, but because you sense that something priceless has been taken, something that can't be returned. You didn't lose to another man in the present. You lost to him years ago in a chapter you'll never be able to rewrite. A woman's past is not just a list of events, it's a living archive of emotional imprints. Each man before you left fingerprints, some soft and forgettable, others burned into her skin like brands. When you feel the weight of that, it's not paranoia. It's the human recognition that intimacy changes people permanently. We can pretend sex is just a physical act, but every ancient culture, every great philosopher, and every religious tradition knew otherwise. They understood that the merging of bodies is the merging of memory. It doesn't just satisfy desire, it shapes it. Schopenhauer once observed, "Every man takes the limits of his own field of vision for the limits of the world." When you look at her and believe you found her at her peak, you may be seeing her through the narrow lens of your own hope, but her world, her field of vision, has already been widened, or perhaps narrowed, by others. If she gave her fire to someone reckless, someone she knew was temporary, then she learned to compress her flame when faced with permanence. This is why so many men feel robbed. They meet her when she has already rationed her warmth. Men sense this loss intuitively. It's not about purity, it's about contrast. She may love you, she may choose you, but she cannot unexperience the way she once gave herself without hesitation. That unfiltered version of her doesn't exist anymore, at least not for you. You get her after the treaties have been signed, after the borders have been drawn, after the war inside her is over. And what's left is a woman negotiating intimacy instead of surrendering to it. In this way, her past is not just history. It's a transaction in which you were never invited, but for which you are still paying the bill. You pay in commitment, in patience, in loyalty. But the man before you, he paid in nothing but charm and proximity, and in return, he received the part of her that feels the most irreplaceable to you. That's why it feels like robbery. It is robbery, just without the crime scene. And perhaps that is what makes it worse. If she had physically stolen something from you, you could confront her. There would be evidence. But when what's stolen is emotional intensity, sexual novelty, and the part of her that could be moved to act without calculation, you are left chasing shadows. You can't demand it back. You can't accuse her without being called insecure. You simply live with the knowledge that the thing you value most is now just a memory she once gave to someone else. What you are feeling is older than language. It is not some modern male hang-up created by movies or social media. It is buried in the oldest parts of the brain. For thousands of years, a man's survival, his lineage, his very place in the tribe depended on one thing: certainty. Certainty that the children he raised were his, certainty that his resources would not be used to nourish another man's offspring. This instinct didn't vanish with the invention of birth control or dating apps. It lives on in every man who has ever lain awake wondering why her past feels heavier than her present. Biology doesn't care about fairness. It doesn't care that she is a different person now. It only knows that her deepest loyalty, her rawest passion, has already been proven for another man. And your body reads that as loss. It's the same reason ancient men guarded their wives fiercely, and the same reason betrayal has always been considered one of the greatest crimes against a man. It's not just about possession, it's about the theft of an exclusive bond that can never be reforged once broken. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." But here lies the cruel irony. The mind can attempt to rationalize her past, but the body remembers its own logic. You can tell yourself it doesn't matter, but a quiet bitterness seeps in anyway. You find yourself comparing, not consciously at first, but in flashes, an unfamiliar look in her eyes, a story she tells with more excitement than she's ever shown you, a tone of nostalgia she can't quite hide. And here's the truth most men won't say aloud. It's not just about the sex, it's about the meaning behind it. Men know that the way a woman gives herself physically is a mirror of how she feels emotionally. If she once gave herself without hesitation, without demands, without calculation, and now she measures every act, weighs every commitment, then you are living with a woman who has already spent her unfiltered self somewhere else. The philosophers called this the tragedy of diminishing returns. You can receive her loyalty, her kindness, even her love, but you will never again receive the thrill of being the man she breaks her own rules for. That thrill was given away, possibly to someone who didn't even care enough to stay. And now you inherit the guarded, measured, rational version of her, while paying the emotional and material price that reckless man never did. And so it gnaws at you, not because you want to control her, not because you believe she is property, but because somewhere inside you know that what was taken cannot be returned, and you can't shake the feeling that you are loving her in the aftermath of a fire someone else got to watch burn in all its beauty. Value for men has always been tied to rarity. A diamond is not precious because it sparkles. Glass can do that. It's precious because it is rare, and because every hand cannot possess it. The same unspoken logic applies to intimacy. Men do not simply value the act itself. They value the exclusivity, the knowledge that what is given to them has not been freely distributed before. When that illusion is shattered, something fundamental collapses. Nietzsche wrote, "We do not value the thing itself, but the meaning we give to it." When you think of her past, you are not just thinking of bodies and moments, you are thinking of meaning. If she gave her most uninhibited self to another man, it means that, at some point in her life, someone else held a version of her that you will never touch. Not because you are unworthy, but because life moves in one direction and passion, once freely poured out, never returns in the same form. Time does not heal this wound for men. In some ways, it deepens it. You begin to notice the stark contrast between the stories she tells about her past and the reality of your present. You hear the laughter in her voice when she recalls something reckless, the ease with which she describes moments of spontaneity she now avoids. She will say she has matured, that she has grown wiser, but you can't help but feel she has simply grown more cautious, saving her wildest self for a time before you ever arrived. And this is why it feels like robbery without resolution. You cannot punish the man who took that part of her. He did nothing legally wrong. You cannot ask her to restore what is gone. It's not a thing she can hand back. You are left in the strange position of loving a woman who is both here and elsewhere, whose body belongs to you but whose history belongs to someone else. The ancient Stoics would call this a battle with the nature of reality itself. Epictetus taught that freedom is the only worthy goal in life. It is won by disregarding things that lie beyond our control. But what happens when what lies beyond your control is the very thing that defines your sense of closeness? How do you disregard the knowledge that the most passionate pages of her story were written in another man's handwriting? This is where the theft becomes psychological torture, because unlike a stolen possession, you cannot replace it. You can only live with the awareness that you are investing in something that has already given its most intoxicating returns to someone who never earned them. And no matter how strong you are, no matter how much you rationalize, there will always be a quiet voice inside that whispers, "You are the man who came after." Once a man feels this kind of theft, something inside him changes. It is rarely dramatic. It's not an explosion. It's a quiet retreat. He doesn't slam the door. He slowly steps away from it. At first, he still gives himself fully, still tries to be the man who can inspire her the way others once did. But somewhere along the way, he realizes he's chasing a ghost. He's competing with a version of her that no longer exists, and every attempt to resurrect it only reminds him that it's gone. So he begins to ration his own passion. It's not revenge, it's survival. The same mind that once told him to ignore the past now whispers, "Protect yourself. Don't give her more than she can give you." And this is where philosophy becomes prophecy. Kierkegaard once wrote, "The most painful state of being is remembering the future, particularly the one you'll never have." That is exactly what men in this position feel. They remember, before it ever existed, a relationship in which they could have had her pure, unguarded, and unreserved. But that future is dead before it was born. And when you know you cannot get something back, your instinct is to stop reaching for it. This is why so many men become emotionally distant without even meaning to. They still care, they still remain loyal, but the fire is smaller. They love with calculation instead of abandon. They kiss with habit instead of hunger. They do not even realize they are doing it. They only know that the balance has shifted, that they now live in a kind of quiet emotional economy where scarcity is the law. Women often misread this as indifference. They think the man has lost interest. But in truth, he is simply adapting to the reality that he is not the first to walk these halls, and that the grandest rooms have already been emptied. He is decorating what remains, making it comfortable, but he knows the foundation once belonged to another architect. And that knowledge changes everything. The tragedy here is not only personal, it's universal. It forces men to confront one of the harshest truths about love. You cannot own the peak of another person's capacity for passion if you did not arrive at the right time. No amount of effort, loyalty, or sacrifice can turn back the clock. And so the man begins to love differently, not because he wants to, but because philosophy has taught him that no man can build eternity out of what was already given away in a single reckless season. The male ego is not simply pride, it is the architecture of a man's sense of worth. It is built from the stones of achievement, respect, and the belief that what he holds dear is truly his. When a man realizes that the most unrestrained, unfiltered version of his woman belongs to a past he never touched, it strikes at the very foundation of that architecture. It is not about ownership in the crude sense, it is about being the one she reserves her best for. Nietzsche warned, "He who despises himself still respects himself as one who despises." That is the dangerous path many men walk when confronted with this truth. They may despise themselves for caring about the past, despise themselves for feeling like they lost a battle they never fought, despise themselves for thinking less of her because they cannot unknow what they know. And yet, even in that despising, there is a kind of respect. They recognize their own longing for exclusivity, for the unmatched thrill of being the first and only. Some men reconcile this with time. They tell themselves the past doesn't matter if the present is good. They remind themselves of her loyalty now, her investment now, her care now. But for many, this becomes a kind of mental self-medication, a constant effort to numb the awareness that they are living in an echo chamber where the loudest, most beautiful sound has already been made. And no matter how loud they play their own notes, they cannot drown out what came before. Others do not reconcile at all. They carry the theft with them like a scar hidden under their clothes. Outwardly, they remain committed, smiling, functioning. Inwardly, they never fully forgive. Not her, not the man who came before, not the version of themselves that didn't arrive sooner. It becomes a quiet, permanent distance, a gap that no amount of affection can cross. Philosophically, this becomes a meditation on time and possession. Seneca wrote, "We are always complaining that our days are few, and acting as though there would be no end of them. The same is true for passion. We think it is infinite, that we can give it to many and still offer it whole to the one we choose forever. But men feel instinctively that passion is finite, that to give the brightest part of it to someone else is to rob the future of its sharpest light. And once they believe they have been robbed, even the most loyal man will quietly guard his own light in return. There comes a point where a man must decide what to do with this knowledge. Some will pretend it doesn't matter, burying it under the routines of daily life, hoping the repetition will dull the sting. Others will turn bitter, carrying it like a secret weapon they will never use but always keep in their pocket, ready to justify every cold moment, every withheld gesture. But the rarest of men will face it head-on, not to conquer it, but to understand it. Understanding begins with accepting that time is the one thief you can never catch. Her past is not a locked box you can pry open and reclaim. It is a river that has already carried its treasures downstream. To resent the current is to wage war against nature itself. And here, philosophy offers a strange kind of freedom. If you cannot reclaim what is gone, you can at least stop trying to live as if you might. Camus wrote, "Freedom is nothing else but a chance to be better." For some men, this means choosing to stay, not in ignorance but in full awareness. They remain because what she offers now, though different from what she once gave, is still worth having. They stop asking for her past self and start dealing only with her present one, refusing to measure today against yesterday. This choice does not erase the theft, but it stops them from living in the shadow of it. Others will leave, not out of malice, but because they know they cannot love without the illusion of being the one she gave herself to most freely. They understand their own boundaries and respect themselves enough to seek a bond untainted by comparison. This too is a philosophical decision, not of punishment, but of preservation. They walk away not because she is unworthy, but because the wound would never truly close if they stayed. And then there are the men who transform entirely. They take the sting of that loss and let it reshape their understanding of relationships, of women, and of themselves. They realize that what they craved was not merely her past, but the feeling of being irreplaceable. And so they stop searching for it in others and start building it within themselves. They become the kind of men whose worth is so deeply rooted that no history, not hers, not anyone's, can rob them of their peace. This is the rarest path because it requires killing the illusion of control, dismantling the ego's craving for exclusivity, and replacing it with something most men never find: the calm power of self-sufficiency. In this state, her past is no longer a theft. It is simply a story that does not concern you. And that, perhaps, is the only real escape from the prison of this truth. In the end, this is not a story about her. It is a story about you, about the way men carry absence like a shadow, about the way we measure value not just in what we have, but in what we imagine we could have had. Her past is fixed. Your reaction to it is not. And yet, most men will chain themselves to that fixed point, dragging it through every conversation, every moment of intimacy, every quiet hour where doubt can whisper in their ear. The brutal truth is that no woman, no matter how loyal she is today, can undo the fact that someone else once received her without the filters, without the conditions, without the caution she now carries. That is why it feels like theft. It was the giving of herself at full flame, and you are left with the glow of the embers. But here lies your choice. Do you spend your life trying to reignite a fire she no longer burns that way? Or do you learn to stand in your own heat? Philosophy offers a warning and a gift. The warning is simple. If you build your worth on being the most in her life, you will always be at the mercy of time. The gift is harder to accept. If you build your worth so high that no comparison can touch it, her past loses its teeth. You stop thinking in terms of being the one and start living as the man, a man who could walk away at any moment, not out of spite but out of unshakable self-respect. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "If you are distressed by anything external, the pain is not due to the thing itself, but to your estimate of it, and this you have the power to revoke at any moment." That is the final power you have over this wound, the ability to decide that it is no longer a wound at all, the ability to see her history as simply that, history, not a theft, not a verdict on your value, but a reminder that your worth was never supposed to be built on another person's purity or passion. Men who master this do not become cold, they become ungovernable. They can love fully without the fear of losing something that was never theirs to begin with. They stop competing with ghosts. And perhaps most importantly, they stop giving away their peace to events that existed long before they arrived. So to every man listening, if you feel robbed, acknowledge it. If you can't live with it, leave. If you can, live on your own terms. But never, never allow someone else's past to dictate the size of your life, because the greatest theft is not her history. It is the years you would waste resenting it. If this struck you deep, share it. If it made you think, like it. And if you know a man who needs to hear this, send it to him. Subscribe, because the conversations no one else will have with you are the ones we have here. And support the channel through the link in the description, because the truth is worth defending.